Sage High School, or International, you know what I'm talking about. The students were so incredible. Let me ask you this question. When I asked them how many of their moms and dads drive distracted, what percentage of the hands of those students do you think were raised?
100.
No, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was 70 to 80%. And that was over 3 presentations I asked the question. Do we have any moms or dads here who've driven distracted with their kids in the car? Okay. So I appreciate your honesty. So I'm going to do it with these two folks, but I could be doing it with everybody. Raise your hands if you would do anything to keep your children safe. Raise them up again. Now only keep your hand up if you haven't driven distracted with your kids in the car. You've already admitted that. I drove distracted with my kids in the car all the time, and the introduction showed I'm an attorney. I'm a personal injury attorney. All that terrible, I haven't watched TV since I've been here, but I'm sure you have terrible ads about lawyers and they want this case or that case. They're all over the country. That's the kind of work we do. We represent people who are injured or people who are killed, the families of those killed. We don't advertise on TV, I'll just say. But I drove distracted all the time too. I'll tell you about a case I had. Testimony from the courtroom. I had the guy on the stand, he raised his right hand, he had to tell the truth. Tell us what happened. There was one lane of traffic for me in this direction, there's one lane of traffic coming the other direction. I have my hands on the steering wheel, I'm going by a convenience store, I saw a really hot girl in tight shorts, and I turned to watch her. My truck went over the double yellow line, and I hit your client's car. Killed their 4-year-old son, and I was on my phone on the way back from that hearing. A 9-year-old girl lost her arm on I-95 in a bus accident. A young driver of the bus was texting. 14-year-old quadriplegic because his driver was busy looking at a GPS. After each and every one of those, I would be on my phone. Probably coming back from the deposition or the hearing, I'd be on my phone. Why? Because it's okay if I do it. But if you're in the car next to me, I certainly don't want you doing it, right? Isn't that what it's about? So there's a large measure of hypocrisy with this. It took me 3 months after Casey was killed until I kind of woke up and I said, whoa, I'm so angry at this 58-year-old man. How irresponsible, he killed my daughter. And I thought about it, he was reaching for a GPS. I would text, I'd have emails, I'd send emails, I'd have meals in the car. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me, and I decided I needed to change the way I drive. I would hope that if Casey hadn't been killed, by now I would have changed the way I drive anyway. But I have a feeling, maybe not. Because I can handle it, right? I can handle it. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Who else will admit that they've looked at a text while driving? Okay, why don't I come over here? I don't know why, but come over here. Separate apart from driving, is respect an important value for you? Respecting others? What does it mean when we say respecting others?
Courteous and space.
Courteous, and space. The golden rule. Maybe treat people the way we want to be treated. All right. So you're driving down the road. You want other people to think you're respectful of others. You're sharing the road with other motorists. There are pedestrians, bicyclists, and you take your eyes off the road to look at a text. Is that the least bit respectful of those you share the road with? No. Have you also driven, looked at your phone too and text? Okay. I'm betting, well, I'm betting you know this guy since you're sitting next to him, first of all. You know him?
I do.
Figured you know him, okay. Let's say he's texted successfully in quotes hundreds of times while he's driving. Hasn't been in a crash. I say successfully in quotes because he hasn't yet been in a crash. How successful do you think I'm going to be if I try to give him the statistics about how dangerous texting while driving is? Do you think that's going to change him at all? Probably not. I agree. That's why I'll give you some statistics about distracted driving, but I don't think talking about the danger is something that we, not all of us, but many of us do, and many of us do without any consequences for a time. I don't think that gets people to change the way they drive. But ask anybody about respect, that's a core value, it's a universal value. Why is it that when we get behind the wheel of a car, our respect for other people flies right out the window? Is respect a core value for you?
Yeah.
Are you taught that in school?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what are you thinking about? Are you driving yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So you probably know that guy, right? You brought him here because you're worried about him, right?
Yep.
Okay. I congratulate you for bringing him here. I can tell looking at him that he's a lunatic, crazy, distracted driver, right? Okay. So we congratulate. And this young man brought his dad too, right? You're worried about these guys. Dads, we should be thankful that our kids are worried about us. Now I'm joking with you. Probably you grabbed them and you made them come. I know that's probably the way it worked here. But respect being a core value. I want you, the next time you get in the car, to think about it. I'm a respectful person. Maybe I shouldn't be driving distracted, even if you haven't been in a crash yet doing it. Let me ask you that. And we haven't even established whether or not you text or drive or look at an email, but let's assume that he does. If he's done that successfully 50 times, 100 times, meaning he hasn't been yet in a crash, do you think that makes it any less disrespectful?
No.
Okay.
Just 6 months.
Okay. I was a lucky driver until the time Casey was killed. Today I'm a safe driver. I wasn't a respectful driver at all. I took driving so cavalierly. I would get in the car, I would drive, and I actually enjoyed it at one time, not anymore. But I actually liked it, it was relaxing for me. God, can you imagine that? It's not relaxing anymore for me, but today, if I share the road with you, you can be assured I'm doing my best to keep me safe, my passengers safe, and everybody I share the road with. Everybody wants to get home. You have a choice now, the way to answer this next question. You can either answer when I ask about distracted driving, or you can answer drunk driving, okay? What's your biggest fear that you're going to be in a crash or someone you care about is going to be in a crash? Who would raise their hand and say it's from drunk drivers? Who would raise their hand and say it's from distracted drivers? So a little bit more distracted drivers. Okay. So we talk about the golden rule. Let me ask this. And listen to the way I ask it, so nobody has to out themselves, okay? In the last month, how many of you have driven drunk or been a passenger in a car where you thought your driver may have had too much to drink? I rarely get a taker on that. In the last month, how many of you have texted, emailed, looked at a YouTube video, or been a passenger in a car where your driver did that? So we think about drunk driving differently than distracted driving. We'll talk about that more as we go along. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. So we're going to talk about the way we drive, choices we make. We're also going to talk about speaking up when you see other people driving distracted. And if we have time, some things that we can do in the community to keep all of us safer. Kind of already went through this, and it's really hard. Now I guess you can see it. So they do studies in it. The studies are now distracted driving is the greatest fear on the highway. The greatest fear more than drugged, drunk, or aggressive drivers, consistently. I'll talk about attentive driving, defensive driving. Were you taught what it means to be a defensive driver?
Not, I mean, somewhat, but you just gotta watch out for yourself and
Okay.
put yourself in a position to be safe and get away from people who aren't.
Have you taken any kind of driver's ed yet? No, okay. Anybody know if their kids are taught about defensive driving? Driver's ed they learn? Okay. So, defensive driving, attentive driving. So we just established that many of us are really, really concerned about distracted drivers on the road. How do we protect ourselves from those distracted drivers? You think that by looking at our phones and not looking at the road, we can protect ourselves from those other drivers? Probably not. So I want to talk about defensive driving and attentive driving. Some of you may have heard about this. It's a very similar concept. Smith rules for safe driving, defensive driving. I think the Smith rules are aim high when you're looking, get the big picture, leave yourself an out, expect that the other guy's going to make a mistake, and make sure that you're seen, I think is what it is. We have something that's similar. It's not ours, but I've stolen it with permission from the researcher. It's called SPIDER. That's the acronym for Safe Driving Steps. I just want to talk about it a little bit. It's kind of hard to see it, but S is scanning for potential threats. P is predicting where those threats will come from. I is identifying an actual threat. D is making a decision when that threat appears. And ER, executing a response. So I'll give you an example. Driving down the road, there's a traffic signal. I have the green light. This guy, I don't know why I'm picking on him, but he's right here. This guy's coming from my right to left. He has to have the red light. I'm scanning. I'm looking all around because I want to make sure that there's hazards I can avoid. And I'm predicting there's a chance he might be on his phone, he might blow through that light. I'm thinking about that's a potential source of danger, a hazard. I identified an actual risk. Yeah, he's on his phone, he's blown through that light now, so that's the I part of it, identifying an actual risk. Now I have to make a decision, the D part. Do I slam on the brakes? Do I swerve? Do I honk the horn? Whatever. That's the ER, execute a response, SPIDER. And I think it's easy to remember, but I think it also goes through all the steps that are involved to be a defensive driver, to be an attentive driver. And it's pretty complicated if you think about it, because there's a lot going on when we're driving on the road. So again, can a distracted driver really be a defensive driver? My job when I drive my car, especially when I have passengers, my job, my foremost responsibility is to keep my passengers safe. Keep my passengers safe. So, going back there to the question that I asked you about the gentleman next to you, talking about risk, if there's some of you who do drive distracted, have driven distracted, I'm not going to try to convince you that it's dangerous, but I'm going to try to convince you that it's disrespectful, and I'm going to try to convince you that if you're driving distracted, no matter how lucky you may have been so far, you can't keep yourself safe from all the crazies on the road. And we'll get to moms and dads being good role models for their children in a little while. Or you did this one. So there's a picture of my daughter, Casey. Although the numbers show she was 21 when she was killed, this was actually taken when she was 18. She's about to graduate high school. She'd been in all the high school plays, and she was going on to college in New York City at Fordham, and she wanted to audition for plays up there, and she wanted some headshots. So this is one of those. And I remember seeing them, and I remember talking to her about it. And I remember when she was, again, just about to graduate high school, thinking she had her entire life in front of her. She could do anything, she could be anyone. And that was taken away in just a few seconds, just a few seconds. July 17th, this past July 17th, was the 10th anniversary of Casey's death. And anniversaries are a time that we reflect upon things. So I reflected upon the fact that my wife and I, Casey was killed between her junior and senior year at college. I reflected upon that we were asked to go to Fordham and accept a diploma in her memory, which we did, which was really kind of brutal. I reflect upon all of her roommates and classmates who are really good friends up at Fordham. They've all gone on to have careers. 3 of them have gotten married. 1 is now pregnant. And I reflect upon that. I reflect upon all these things that we've lost, all these losses. And no, it's not like I don't sleep at night now. It's not like I'm sobbing all the time. It's not like I can't go to work and I can't do things anymore like it was at the beginning. But I think about all these things. I do think about these things. And I think about what Casey should have been able to do and everything that will never be. Like walking her down the aisle. Her best friend was her cousin, her first cousin. Her wedding is October 5th. Casey would have been in the wedding. We're going to go, of course, but and we've been to a number of them, and they're really hard. They're really hard, really hard. I don't think, though, that seeing a pretty face, hearing about someone who's killed tragically by itself, I don't think that changes people's attitudes and behaviors. I think I get your attention. I get your attention. But I think we need to find reasons why people will change their attitudes and behaviors. Of course, you know my reason. My daughter was killed. And we have a very active website, and oftentimes around the country when people, whether they go to jail for killing people or they get, or they don't go to jail, they always get community service hours. So I've worked with probably, I don't know, close to 20 people who've killed while driving distracted across the country. Are they ready to walk into a high school or an assembly, something like this? Are they ready to tell their story? Will it be the kind of story that will get people to think about distracted driving? Are they really remorseful? Because I'm not going to just do it because the lawyer wants me to have their client so they get a lesser sentence or something like that. Will it really work? So I work with those folks. They don't drive distracted anymore either. So people like me who've lost our loved ones, you got those who killed our loved ones, they don't drive distracted, then we got the rest of us. Is it going to take, and this is a rhetorical question, for anyone here who's driven distracted in the most recent past, is it going to take a tragedy? Do you have to be on one side of this or the other for you to change the way you drive? Hopefully, I give you some reasons to think about. Hopefully, you'll leave here, and if you've been driving distracted, you'll be a little uncomfortable with that choice. You'll feel that maybe I need to be a better example if you have children or friends. And maybe, just maybe, you say, gosh, you know what? I am a respectful person. I bet all of you have driven distracted. If you came up to some place and there was someone trying to get in a front door and they had a big package, all of you would rush up there and open the door. That's the right thing we do. If someone came up to you on the street and asked for directions, you give them directions. When we get behind the wheel of a car, and that respect for other people, that humanity, we toss it right out the window. But we can do better. I'm optimistic we can do better. That's the other part. I am so fortunate. Well, not fortunate, of course, for why I do this, but in the aftermath of Casey's death, I'm incredibly fortunate. Today, I haven't given a talk at high school since June, since school got out. So this is my first one, and there were 4 of them today. And I just realized how wonderful it was, and I really missed speaking with students. I gave not that many talks this summer, maybe a dozen or so at businesses and conferences, but I'm so charged about this. These kids, many of them in 8th grade, are just saying, you know, it's just like drunk driving. We can't do that. We can't do that. And they were planning how, when they get their licenses, they're going to avoid temptation. Because that's kind of what it's about, right? They don't have the habit yet of using their phones while driving. Many of us here do, but they have the habit of using their phones. So we have to get a little thought about that. We're so conditioned to reach for our phone. Why should we expect it to be different when kids get in the car? I didn't say this at the beginning, but being a lawyer, I'm used to being interrupted all the time. So if anybody has any questions, just yell them out, okay? Those are the stats. So I'm going to play this video, and I'm going to go right down this side, starting with this young man, and I'm guessing your dad, right? You know? Okay. And I'm going to go right down this row, all the way down the row, and I may call on some other people. I'm just going to play a video. I just want to know what your reaction is to it. Could be one word, could be a phrase. Okay? Fair warning, you go first. What do you think?
I think he needs to pay more attention to the road rather
Need-
than what he's doing.
Needs to pay more attention to the road.
The first word that came to my mind was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Okay.
I've seen the same thing here in town with a person driving a daycare bus.
Okay, so that's a factual kind of statement. Is there any emotional part to that? Like, How do you feel about that?
Well, the one that I witnessed myself was scary and angering.
Okay, scary and angry,
Yeah, kind of terrifying as something's gonna happen eventually.
terrifying something's gonna happen eventually. Sir, what do you think?
Be ready.
Be ready, yeah, okay, be ready, okay. How about this young lady?
One word was just stop.
Stop, okay.
I've seen that type of behavior before on another clip with,
Okay. So we've
I've
seen,
been looking at a video, but I've also seen it here in town with one of the Medicare type transport. The driver's making a
Oh.
left-hand turn and he's got the phone right up here, he's not paying attention.
let me show you what a lot of our reactions are. I'm gonna click it again, and you're gonna see how this lines up, how students look at this very differently than we do as parents. I've shown this video to thousands and thousands of students, thousands and thousands of adults. I've yet to have an adult. You're a young adult, okay? He's an old adult. You're a young adult. I've yet to have an adult say selfish or disrespectful. Kids tell me that all the time. And so I'm not so smart. You say, oh, he thought about respect. That's the way you get through to people about distracted driving. I'm not so smart. I just listen to the kids. And it took me about 6 months after hearing this thing, respect. Because I never would have thought distracted driving was disrespectful. Dangerous, risky, yeah, but I never would have thought disrespect. But the kids think that way, and we're teaching them. I'll tell you, it's a rare school I'll go into. I don't know, I might go into 50 different schools during a given year. It's a rare school I see where they don't have a banner saying respect is our value, respect is our core value. So we're teaching them about it. What's the difference? What's the difference? Anybody, what's the difference between the way that our kids look at this video and the way we look at the video?
Age and experience.
Okay, could be. You want to give a little more explanation?
Just the maturity from an age standpoint and experience from a driving standpoint.
Okay. Anybody else?
We adults look at it as though it's dreadful, that something bad's gonna happen.
Okay.
I think students see it as something happening to them.
Students see it as something happening to them. Could be, yeah. Yes, sir?
I'm a former high school principal, and I see adults, 30, 40, 50s, they've lost loved ones. I lost my best friend in college to a drunk driver right out here at Black Cat in 1961. And now, as a former high school principal, young people are indestructible. This could not happen to me. The adults, older adults, as you refer, have known loss more than these young folks, and that's where they get the idea that they're indestructible.
Hmm.
It's a matter of experience.
Did you have? Yes.
Okay. It looks like the students are able to point out to the behavior.
The students point to the behavior of the driver.
Correct.
Okay.
While the adults just talk about the situation, but not the behavior behind the
Behavior versus situation. That's part of it too, I think. A number of kids have told me, when I ask them that same question, why the difference, a number of kids will say, oh, well, my mom drives distracted all the time. You don't expect her to say that she is selfish and disrespectful, so she says it's dangerous. There's no right answer, but I think it's an interesting perspective. If I want to get people to put down their phones, do you think I should talk to them about danger, or do you think I should talk to them about respect? That's a rhetorical question, because there's no right answer either. I think respect. And we're studying that with some researchers to see if using respect is I don't say it's a better way, it's just another way. Because, this gentleman might react to respect, this gentleman might react to statistics, somebody else might react to, gosh, I'm being a terrible role model for my kids. Doesn't matter to me what it is, as long as we can move people, as long as we can move people. These are the excuses that we hear as to why we drive distracted. I guess I should probably ask folks. Why don't I ask this gentleman back here? Any of those would be ones that you might say now that you're looking at it and we're sitting here, any of those might apply for you?
Yeah, probably the last one.
Need to be in contact, work, family, and friends. Is it all three?
Probably more family.
More family, yeah, more family. So I do a talk, not often, but I do a talk with a mom. Her daughter was responding to a text, and she didn't see, it was on I-95 in Maryland, didn't see that the tractor trailer was stopped. When her daughter looked away, slammed into the back of the tractor trailer, had a brain injury, lost an eye, has had a dozen facial reconstructive surgeries. And the mom gets up there and she talks about how infuriated she was. Who would be texting her daughter while she was driving? She got the phone. The text was, "Where are you at, honey, Mom? Where are you at, honey, Mom?" We talked to the kids about that today. Your mom and dad want to know where you are. We're deathly afraid when our kids are in the car. We've got a reason to be afraid. How do we work on that so that we're not contacting? And they came up with some pretty good ideas. So the man who killed Casey, his wife told me that he only looked away for a few seconds. That was in the courtroom. She came up to me after it was all over, and she said, some other things, and he only looked away for a few seconds. I talk to people all around the country who lost loved ones. And I ask them. It's something I could ask because I'm a dad who's lost someone. Other people may not be able to. And I just say, I don't want you to think about the day in the courtroom too much, but I really need to know. What did the person, because when someone is going to be sentenced, the judge normally says, would you like to stand and say anything before I pass sentence? That's typically what happens in the courtroom. And so most people get up, and most people, I think, are well motivated. Some people, I think, are coached by their lawyers, but whatever the case may be, they get up and they talk. No matter how much they're coached by their lawyers, most of what the lawyer tells them, I think, in the anxiety of the moment, it goes out the window. And they'll say things, and they'll say these things. This is what I've heard. This is what I've heard when I've asked those family members. So pink is my daughter's favorite color. That's why I have pink wristbands. But when I talk talks like this, often parents come up to me and they give me wristbands in their child's favorite color. Does anybody here, a parent, know their child's favorite color? What's your child's favorite color? Green? Is it a boy or a girl? Boy. So the boys are on this side, and then the girls are on that side. So I have them all. So Megan, she was 8.5 months pregnant when she was killed, she and her unborn child. There was a texting driver who said, I'd never been in a crash before. Casey, we know that driver said, I only looked away for a few seconds. Heather, this one over here, it was an important call. It was an important call, that's why I looked away. Over here, I mean, it's the same thing, all of these excuses. So who here wants to be in a courtroom, wants to pick from that list and tell the judge, tell the prosecutor, and tell the family that's grieving the loss of a loved one that it was just a few seconds, that you've never been in a crash, that you're a safe driver, that you need to be in contact with family and friends. And I'm not getting on your case for that. I used to be that way too. Nobody wants to be in that position. Of the 25 to 30 people I've worked with who've killed while driving distracted, I would say the average age is probably in their 30s, but I have people in their 60s and 17, 18, 19, 22, 24-year-olds. Not a single one of those people had a criminal record before that day. So these are the excuses we give ourselves. And I'm a lawyer. I like to look at evidence and say, what evidence is there to support the fact that since we haven't been in a crash yet, we won't be in a crash tomorrow or next week? As a matter of fact, and I'm not good at numbers and statistics, but I've talked to people, and they tell me over a given period of time, if you do something that has a risk attached to it, the closer that the next time you do it, you're going to have that bad result. I cannot explain the statistical part of it, but it kind of makes sense at some level. So for all of you who are like me, have gotten away with it, maybe you won't tomorrow, maybe you won't the next week. So what we're going to do here is let's take out our phones and put them on the table in front of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, put it down flat. Okay. Well, no, you can look at it. It can be face up, just assuming that it's being charged in the car as we're driving. Okay, so not in your hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say go. And what I want you to do is I want you to look down, look at your last text, and as soon as you see it, look up. You're going to see numbers. It's going to count off seconds, and then it'll say 3 seconds or 6 seconds, and I'll just call on you and say, what was it, okay? Did I explain that right? Okay. So I'm going to say, when I'm going to say, don't do it now. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. If you haven't looked up yet, it's 6+. How long was it for your dad?
2.
2? Okay, that's pretty quick. How about for you guys?
For me, it was 6, but I have a 6-digit code I have to put in to
Okay,
turn the phone
all
on.
right. For you? At least 6? 4? You were about 4 too. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, I-84 is out here, right? What I want all of you to do, don't listen to me now. What I want all of you to do, the next time you're out on I-84, I want you to do me a favor. Go 60 or whatever the speed limit is.
Close your eyes.
Exactly right. I want you to close your eyes for 4 seconds. Are you going to do that for me? No. Well, I tell you, don't do that. Don't do that. We wouldn't do that. It's nuts. I mean, this guy's crazy asking me to close my eyes. But for many of us, when we look away from the road, we might as well be as if our eyes are closed. I got this from, I want to give him credit for it. The spider thing is a research project by a research scientist out of MIT, a guy named Don Fisher, who works with NHTSA a lot. And so I was talking to him about this. He said, hey, why don't you do this and this? So I have to report back to him. Did this work? Is this a good exercise? Okay, I'll tell Don. So, the 2-second rule. All right, my daughter has been killed by a distracted driver. I drive cars. Oftentimes, although I'll say less now with Uber and Lyft, do I rent a car, but I still rent cars. So I don't know what the car is like. I sit in the parking lot, I get used to it. But I still have to put on the windshield wipers. I might want to change the radio station. So the 2-second rule says basically, when I do that and I say, okay, I'm going to look away from the road, I start counting. 1001, 1002. If I haven't finished the task, I come back and I look at the road again. I go back and I complete that process because the studies show 2 seconds, up to 2 seconds, you're reasonably safe looking away from the road, but beyond 2 seconds, we double and triple our crash risk. So just something to think about when we're looking away from the road. As a human being, we are distractible. And sometimes we need to look away from the road at our controls or something. Now this doesn't mean, as you're driving along, and you've forgotten when you were stopped to program your GPS, whether it's in the car or it's on your phone, that you should do that while you're driving. Clearly, we should pull over to the side of the road, and we should do that when stopped. But the 2-second rule, for what it's worth. Little X was walking across the street. His big sister was holding his hand. He wanted to get across the street, I guess quicker than she was, but they're in the crosswalk. He's a step and a half in front of her. A 20-year-old is texting, hits him, rips him out of his sister's grasp, drags him down the road under the car. Texting driver, a little then 5 or 6-year-old boy who's 9 now. He has what some people might say is the worst injury a human being could have and still be alive. He's paralyzed from the neck down. His level of paralysis is so high, he can't even breathe for himself. Today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, for as long as that now 9-year-old little boy lives, he can only breathe because he's hooked to a machine. 20-year-old who's texting, little X hooked to that machine. To me, that's selfish. That's selfish. the excuse, I've never been in a crash. You are going to see, I'm going to warn people, for those who have younger folks here, you're going to see a pedestrian hit, thrown up in the air, okay? So I just say that as a warning for folks, okay? Okay? So you'll see the pedestrian standing there, he's ultimately hit. What the 20 or 22-year-old young woman was doing, I don't know if it was her purse or her backpack on the front seat, I forget. She was reaching into it for something, took her eyes off the road. Kept telling the police officer, and this is in a suburb of Vancouver, British Columbia, Abbotsford. Kept telling the police officer over and over again after the crash, but I'm a safe driver, I've never been in a crash. I was told by someone who talked to the police officer, I think they call them constables up there, he basically told her, please be quiet, I don't want to hear it anymore. Think about it. She just about kills a pedestrian, he survived, and she kept saying over and over again, but I've never been in a crash. Isn't that kind of what we've been telling ourselves, a lot of us? Hey, I can text and drive, I can email and drive, I've never been in a crash, so let me run this.
Oh, goodness.
But she'd never been in a crash before. So again, I think it comes back to, are we lucky drivers or are we safe drivers? Today I'm not safe driver, but until Casey was killed, and actually until a couple months after, till I changed the way I drive, I was that lucky driver. And so kind of on employees things, I mean, we're a law firm. We represent people who are injured in crashes. I would tell my employees, be safe on the road. Half an hour later, I couldn't find something, I'd be texting them, even though I knew they were driving. I tell them to be safe, but I say, hey, get in touch with me. Where's that brief? Where's that kind of thing? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Who's worried about their teen children, even older than teen children, in distracted driving? We have reason to worry. Unfortunately, we have reason to worry. It's the leading cause of death for our kids until they get to be 24 years old. And more than 50%, it's close to 60% of teen crashes, serious teen crashes, are caused by distraction. For the population as a whole, if you go to the websites, you know, all drivers like 15 to 90, it's probably 12 to 15%. But for teens, close to 60%. So you're going to see a split screen. Moms and dad had agreed to have their kids be part of a research study. They put two cameras in the car. One shows the teen's face. The other shows where they are in relation to the road. In each case, you'll see that the teen is drifting off the road, either off to the side or over the center line. In one of them, I don't know if we have the ability to dim the lights a little bit here, because this is a tough one to see. It's probably here, and there's so many different things.
Oh, just push.
No, I'm not
See
doing
what
that.
happens.
I'm not doing it. The screen might go off. I don't want to do that. In one of these, yeah, if you can dim it, just dim it. In one of these, you'll see that the kid looks at his phone, looks up for a second, and clear as day, he's going off the road, but he doesn't swerve. He goes right back to the phone. Why? And it's only when the wheel goes off the side of the road and you hear a noise that he suddenly swerves. So neuropsychologists who look at this, they study the way our brain works, say a 1 second quick glance up is not enough time to orient us to what's going on. We see it with our eyes, but it doesn't get processed in our brain. So that's why, even though he saw it, he went right back to the phone. So a lot of people say, oh, I look up. But that 1 second glance is not enough. So a lot can happen in just a few seconds. A lot can happen in just a few seconds. And our teens, our children are the most inexperienced of drivers. I heard that a bunch today. I'm also hearing this, well actually, I don't know why the quote isn't in there, but I'm hearing from big brothers and big sisters, I need to drive safely to show my little brother and sister that we don't drive distracted even if mom and dad do. It's wonderful to hear, but it's a pretty sad commentary. So all the experts say, well, let me ask, what's the most important thing you can do to keep your kids safe from distracted driving? What do you think?
Lead by example.
Lead by example.
Teens whose parents drive distracted are twice as likely to also drive distracted. Our children look up to us. They pick up our habits, good and bad. What behaviors are you teaching your children? What distractions would you give up if it meant saving your child's life?
Is there anybody here who's willing to go on record, so to speak, right now and say, I am going to drive differently for my kids? Anybody willing to say that? If you have driven distracted before, and your kids have seen it, which they know, they've seen it, the experts also say, tell them that you're going to change the way you drive, that you should not have been driving distracted and you want their help. If you see me, mom or dad driving distracted, speak up and say something. And then they also say, stop it there. You're going to be tempted to say, and I don't want you driving distracted. It's a different time for that. This time is to fess up to what you've done and say you're changing and you want their help. Experts say if we can get kids as young as 5 or 6 years old enlisted to keep us safe and not drive distracted, we stand a chance of keeping them from ever driving distracted. Real quickly, we're working on elementary school lesson plans for 2nd and 3rd grade and 4th and 5th grade that'll be ready to pilot in November. So if you have any close connections with elementary school teachers, you can get a hold of us through Compass or someone else. We'd love to have some schools out in this area pilot that for us. Oh, here it is. So, I had a bad habit. I would drive distracted. I would text. I do emails. I changed that, and you know why I changed. I'm no longer tempted to drive distracted. Even though Casey was killed, for about 6 months or a year after I committed not to drive and distracted, I was still tempted. Back then, we didn't have, who's got iPhones? Okay, back then, we didn't have do not disturb while driving on our iPhone. Do you know what that is? Okay. Do you know what that is? Do you have an iPhone? No. Okay. So it's on the Android system, the Galaxy.
Yeah.
They have something very similar. I don't have one, so I don't know how you do it, but this gentleman, any young person here would be able to.
disturb on the Galaxy.
It is too? Any young person here would be able to figure it out for you. So I don't need that, but I have it. If you text me or call me, let's say tomorrow when I drive back to the airport, it doesn't even come to me. It is blocked, and a message like this goes out. Hi, this is Joel. I'm driving. It's not safe to respond. I'll get back to you when I stop. So I tell you why I'm not responding, but I'm also letting you know that it's not safe. That's the way we spread the message, by letting other people know. And if we have the habit of doing this, it's hard to break that habit. There are some studies that show 21 days of changing your behaviors, 28 days is something to, if you do it for 21 or 28 days, you change that habit. I'll also say this. Before Casey was killed, I would allow anybody and everybody to interrupt me while I was driving. I actually thought it was a badge of honor. I was being efficient for my work. Today, no one interrupts me. I don't allow you through that app. It's not an app, it's actually the setting. I don't allow that. It's wonderful having time to myself. I've recaptured something. And maybe for some of us who have busy personal lives, busy professional lives, which probably includes all of us, it's kind of neat to have that time to yourself. And, you know, in addition to being a respectful driver, a caring driver, I'm letting other people know that I won't take those calls. And I have that time. You look puzzled.
Well, so we're all being respectful to you, and we all do this in every meeting where we shut our phone off, and that's just habit now, and that's what you do. Why do we not just do that in the car? I'm perplexed by that.
You know why?
Respect here in a meeting,
You know why?
but not in a car.
I have my thought on that. If your phone went off now in the middle of it, you'd say, oh my God, how rude I am. He must think that I'm so rude. I'm right here. Now, put the car around you, the metal around you, and have you whiz down the road. You don't have that accountability. I think that's what it is.
It's weird to me.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird. But it's something we can do. And we're so afraid of all the other people driving distracted, and we think, I mean, for most of us, probably all of us, the golden rule is significant. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. You know you don't want them driving distracted, so why do we do it?
Well, I've been in a car where the driver got on the phone to find the place, and I said, put that away. I'm in the car and have a phone. I'll do that. And he still kept, and I'm like, no, I really mean it.
Okay, so what we've trained, I don't know if it's your children, but the children that I spoke with today at Sage and the ones I'm going to speak to tomorrow at Ridgeview. Because they have the same issue. Many of them, 8th graders, they don't have licenses. So think about how tough it is for them.
Right.
They don't have a license, they're not even driving. How are they going to speak up? Well, we talk to them. This is what you do. We use I statements, not you statements. Here's a bad statement. You're driving, you're the lunatic, crazy driver. I'm his passenger. You're going to kill us all. You're the worst driver I've ever seen. How could you do that? No, I'm not the worst driver. I've never been in a crash. I'm not going to kill you. He gets defensive, that's the end. However, and let's try this on for size. Actually, let's say your son said this to you. Okay? You're driving, you look at your phone, and he says, Dad, I love you, but I don't feel safe when you drive me and look at the phone. How are you going to feel?
Put it right down.
Put it right down. So that's what we taught him. Now, you know, I don't know if you want to say to your boss or your other friend, honey, I love you, but I don't feel safe. But I don't feel safe, I feel nervous. I statements, and this is not just for distracted driving, they teach kids about the benefit of interpersonal communication using I statements versus blaming you statements. So, you know, that's something else that we can do. And most people, if you ask them that way, they'll put the phone down. Now, when they're in the car the next time by themselves, I don't know if they still will, but you know, we like a little victory is a victory here.
Right.
So I statements as opposed to you statements, and we get people. And actually, the statistics for kids show they've got a 78 to 90% chance of getting their friend to put the phone down if they speak respectfully using an I statement. Not as many studies for kids to parents, but the ones that have come out indicate it's about 40 to 50%. Kind of sad, really. They get their friends to put the phone down, but less likely to get mom or dad to put the phone down. But that's the way it is. So a practical solution is avoiding the temptation. Some people say, well, you know, you talked about it again. I admit that when I get on a plane, as I came out last night from Denver, and I'm going to go back to Denver tomorrow, when they get up there and they say, you know, turn your phone off and put it on airplane mode, I put it on airplane mode. Why do I do that? Because I don't want the thing to be roaming for the whole trip and use up my battery. I mean, I don't know. I don't really think that if my phone is not on airplane mode that the pilot isn't going to be able to converse with flight control. But whatever the reason, but we do it.
Right.
So you can put your phone on airplane mode when you're driving. But I think these settings are a really good idea because you let people know why you're not answering them. And we also talk with the kids about, hey, if you find one of your friends do it, it's really important to socially support them. Say, hey, that's a cool idea, that's really responsible. Kids, back and forth together, social support is really, really important. I think it's also important for us as adults, too. But I'd keep trying with whoever that is.
I'm going to.
Keep trying.
70 years old.
Well, I mean,
Have respect.
I guess I'm almost as old as everybody in the room, and I'm not that far away from that. So there's hope for us. There's hope for us. We have an annual video and meme contest. The memes are okay, but the videos are really good. This was the winner. In every April, which is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month, we pick the winner. And this was the winner. It's the first video we've had in 3 years where the kid took the perspective of the parent. I'm not saying it's wrong for teens to take the perspective of the teen, but this one took the perspective of a parent. And I'll ask you about it. Ask you whether or not you think it makes sense to continue to show this one.
Not a day. Nice going, kid. One more, and... All right, listen. I'm sorry, we gotta rock and roll. I gotta pick up your sister. Pick up my glove while you're at it.
We'll come back next week. Your mother's calling. Hold on a second. Yeah? No, I know. No, we're heading in now. Listen, somebody else is calling you. Let me just see who this is.
Dad! Dad! You ready, Dad?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, sure.
All right, let's do this.
Casey was killed as a pedestrian. For a year or two after her death, I questioned whether or not I had taught my daughter to cross the street, right? That's what we teach our children. Now, after a year or so, I said to myself, well, she was in Manhattan for 3 years. She knew how to cross the street, so it's not my fault. But we look for that to explain something that we can't explain. And that's just a video that didn't take place. But I've done talks with people who've killed their kids, paralyzed their kids like this. And as hard as it is to go on after your child is dead, I can't imagine what it would be like if you were a cause of it, So we talked about respect. We've talked about protecting ourselves from all the distracted drivers out there by being attentive drivers, Spider. We've talked about being good role models for our children. And, I think about this and I mean, what I come back to all the time is that I'm alive and my child is dead. And there's nothing that's going to change that. But I've had a really good day today. I've had a great day. I'm going to have a great day again with the kids, a great day with the kids, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you, so I think I'm really fortunate in many, many ways. I'm fortunate. And I think the tragedy of Casey's death can be lessened by knowing that I've gotten through to some of you, and that maybe you'll get through to some other people. And I'm so thankful for Compass and the Idaho Transportation Department for having me come out here. They've been wonderful hosts. Anybody have any questions? Any questions or thoughts? Yes?
There's various apps out, as I understand, that'll basically function like a do not disturb or that. Do you have any thoughts on those?
The way the apps, we have it on our website on dndd.org, and you can type in that search thing on top, you can type in apps, and we have 4 or 5 of them. Some of those will shut the phone down, block the notifications. Some require you to do that, but will give you a report of your driving or your family members driving. I have on my phone Life 360. So it's this kind of thing here, the rounded things, the squiggly things, Life 360.